Now I really didn't think I'd make another video on the Akaso Brave 4 action camera. It's a pretty unreliable piece of hardware that I don't want to use on a daily basis. But still, there are two main reasons for making this video. First of all, I want to show off these new footage that I recorded, which I think look really cool. But secondly, more importantly, someone left a comment on one of my videos saying that they find 1080p video to look better than the 4K version, which is pretty strange to me because I didn't really use this in 1080p mode all that often. You know, being a nerd, I love overkill and I always set it to the absolute max resolution and just roll with it. So this is just a super short video trying to validate that claim if 1080p looks better than 4K. So I mounted this camera on my tallest tripod and just took it out for a spin because why the hell not? I'm not a professional and I just like to have fun. Viewers, to note that this microphone is for visual enhancement purposes only. It doesn't serve any practical use since this damn camera doesn't have a microphone port. Now back to the video. Now there are a couple of issues with the software on this camera which I have mentioned in some of my previous videos, that sometimes when you enable EIS or electronic stabilization, it doesn't seem to record footage. That commonly happens with 1080p 60 fps because I can't even get to the preview screen here. I could have sworn that it was working the other day, but now it just doesn't. I can't really give you any 1080p clips here, but I could record some 720p at 60 fps. So let's take a look at both clips in 4K 24 fps and at 720p 60 fps. See if you note any image differences. I didn't. Now this footage is at 1080p 30 fps. As I mentioned, I couldn't get the 60 fps version to work. The exposure roll-off on this is still not better than 4K. I've complained about that before and I'm still bringing it up now. The lack of any dynamic range on this camera really doesn't make it a good option to be used. Like, the sky is devoid of any detail here. In this case, the sky was pretty clear with the very moderate clouds and it still couldn't pick it up and it's plain white. When I switched it to 720p at 60 fps, the quality took a major hit. I could easily tell the dip in clarity and even the dynamic range, which was already pretty poor, dropped even lower than that. Even though it was 60 fps on the screen of the camera, the footage doesn't look like 60 fps to me. I don't really know what's going on. The shots with even exposure and a static background look okay, like the floor, but the lack of stabilization despite EIS being enabled doesn't really make it a daily driver material, at least not at 720p 60. When I switched back to 4K, things did improve a little bit. Though the dynamic range was pretty poor, the exposure I think slightly improved. The colors were still pretty washed out though. Oh hey look, an almond bond. Yep, we do have an almond tree. It's one of the tallest trees that we have. Now while this is not a very high quality footage to be used, among the others that I saw, this definitely is the sharpest one, and if I'm using this camera, I will be using it at 4K, just like before. So to answer that question in the comment, no, I didn't really see any difference with 1080p and 4K, and forget about 720p. Now I tried a couple of things like turning the EIS off and on, switching between resolutions and stuff, but it just wouldn't go to the video screen as long as it's in 1080p. And even if it does end up in the video screen, it just wouldn't record if I hit the record button. So I've said this before and I'll say it again. This camera is very unreliable and I don't want anyone to use this for any serious work. I guess on a positive note, the 4K 24 fps works pretty well, so you can use this as a cheap alternative to your car dash cam, I guess. And there are other modes like time-lapse, which I praised in my previous video because that's the only thing that works reliably. And since I already own this camera, I'll only be using it for those. Since it's easy to carry, it won't be much of a burden and I can easily record time lapses of stuff when I'm doing something else. I guess it'll be useful to have its wide field of view, at least when I'm in a brightly lit environment. But anyway, I hope this answers your question in at least some way. Again, I'm sorry I couldn't get the 1080p mode working. But yeah, if you like this video then great, leave it a like, I guess. Consider subscribing if you like straight to the point tech videos like this. Besides that, there is nothing much I want to cover in this video, so I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.